So before we go to Q&A, really quick, I want to ask you, in this patch, what do you think are the three critical things you would recommend to any jungler right now to be able to carry a game in solo queue? The three critical points to remember.
Uh, hmm. Well, I say this a lot of times. I feel like maybe it's gone a little bit overboard, but timing stuff, timing everything, and using those timing windows is extremely important. So that doesn't just mean timing stuff you saw. So for instance, that means that you know for a fact that the opposing jungler, whatever route he did, he's probably finishing his first buff at around 7 minutes and 20 seconds,
Okay.
while he's finishing his second buff at around, I mean, 2 minutes and 20 seconds is the first buff, and the second buff would be finished around 3 minutes, right? So this is just basic knowledge from just playing the jungle. So you know, even if you don't know what side he started, you know for a fact that one of those buffs is going to be coming up at either 7 minutes and 20 seconds or at 8 minutes.
Right.
You can just be there, and that's a opportunity for you to be there and pick someone off, get a kill, and you're bound to get it. So just these timings are little opportunities for you to be able to make a play that is not likely to be expected, especially if they didn't know that you started if they made it so that you don't know what side they started, they would very unlikely expect you to invade. So that's really useful. You can get fights going because that's what you want to do. You want to get fights happening because you don't want to just be doing nothing but farming. And
well, that might be number two, is playing a very heavy, would you say, playing a very gank and fight-oriented style?
No, not necessarily. I don't
No?
think that's completely the way that you can win solo queue. I think you can definitely play Kale jungle and farm all day and just find gank opportunities that are pretty much handed to you on a silver platter. But aside from that, yeah, I don't think you need to go completely farm. I think it's definitely possible for you to play a farm style. The thing is, that style is only going to be effective if you can actually find a gank after. If you can make a play happen afterwards. So if you don't know how to force something afterwards, force a gank or force a fight, it's not going to be a good play style for you to have. So I feel like that's something that takes a little bit more
Introspection.
more game knowledge to be able to pull off. Just because if you're a six-sided Master Yi, but you don't know how to actually use that or create an advantage with it, then that's not going to get you anywhere.
Okay. So then what would you say number two is?
Oh, well, for number one, you also got to time summoner spells, right? Time summoner spells, time teleports. Literally time as much as you... If you know the cooldown of it, time it. That's pretty much it.
Okay.
And everyone knows the cooldown of practically everything. I mean, a lot of times I try to time. I don't actually type it, but I time jungle camps in my head because I know they're like 50 seconds to a minute. So I know, okay, I just cleared this one. By the time I get up here and I just return here, even though there's not a camp now, I'll be able to actually just get to it as soon as it spawns and waste as little time as possible. Aside from that, number two would be I think being able to recognize who on your team can carry is going to win you the game. They're really important. So just looking at a game and seeing all 10 champions and thinking, okay, where would most of the action be happening? Okay, now you just look at it and think, well, if you're playing Nidalee, Nidalee is probably not going to generate a lot of action until level 6, so something you can ignore. But if you see like somebody playing a Renekton, you know, okay, this lane is probably going to be able to create something happening early. But then you also need to understand that Renekton is not going to be a crazy late game champion, right? But you can see that he's up against a Jack, so you think, okay, so right off the bat, you know, the opponent has a counter pick matchup. So they have Renekton, you have Renekton, which counters Jack. So the opponent is thinking, well, we picked Jackson to Renekton. We need to make sure that we can get this Jax out of this counter pick lane and just win the game from there.
Mm-hmm.
So you know from the beginning that your opponent would need to actually focus the Jax lane. So you can go to that lane and say, well, I'm just gonna go to your lane and shut your strategy down because we have stronger champions in the early game. So being able to recognize that and just looking at certain champions and saying this champion can carry against a specific team comp is going to make it a lot easier for you to just manage your resources and time and be able to devote yourself to each specific lane and varying from game to game to the lane that needs it the most and the lane that's going to be able to actually carry, because you don't want to yank a lane that's like, oh, nice, I made my Renekton go 10-0, but then he couldn't carry because he got outscaled, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's not what you want to be doing. So being able to recognize this, and it's going to give you a lot more success in your solo queue games.
Would you say that there's those sites like na.op.gg? A lot of the time you can check people's records on those sites while you're in the loading screen. Would you actually recommend that? I actually found that, say like, like the Riven top lane is, currently 21-3 or something. You check that and like, it's like, okay, I'm going to camp that lane. Does that make sense?
I mean, I'd recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if you're looking to get into competitive play, I wouldn't recommend that at all.
Okay. Okay, but if you're trying to win solo queue and gain elo, is it a good play? Or?
If you want to play the best, if you want to have the easiest time in the game, yeah, go for it. Obviously, knowing what setup your teammates are running is to be your opponents are running is really useful. But I don't do it just because I can't do that in an actual game. So that would basically kind of spoil me, and I won't be able to use that in a real situation. But
okay.
If you just want to play the game for fun, just want to climb up the ladder for fun, by all means go for that. But I wouldn't recommend to do that, just because it's kind of an unfair advantage. I mean, I don't care if my opponents scout me, just because I'm confident enough in what I'm running and half the time you can even tell what they're running just by clicking on somebody. Mm-hmm. So it's not a problem. But the third one and not doing that would be. Honestly, the biggest thing to actually carry a game is just not surrendering in it, even unless it's like unbelievably obvious. Now, this kind of applies to the second point that I gave, which was knowing what can carry in what situation. Mm-hmm. See a game and you're skilled enough at League that you can say, okay, even though we're 10 kills behind, there's still windows for us to create plays. There's still champions that we can kill with being far behind. We still have the ability to pick somebody off. We still have the ability to do this and do that. So just being able to recognize this and then transition it to, well, even though we're down 20 kills, it's solo queue. The way the opposing team is playing, I can kind of read that there's still kind of hope in this game. So just being able to like that shit, even though, I mean, it'll ultimately make you a better player, but it'll increase your games right? I mean, you might as well not surrender. If it's already like you're down in the dumps already, you might as well see if the opposing team is going to throw. Half the time they will. So
yeah,
it's pretty valid to not surrender unless you have to go or you just don't feel like playing, but you should adopt that attitude. You should be looking to play each game.
Seriously, yeah. I remember Odd One had a quote. He said, "You don't outplay the enemy team. You wait for them to outplay themselves."
Yeah, that's very solo queue.
Yeah, I like that. So the number 3 would be don't give up too early, or don't surrender to, or avoid surrendering.
Once you've identified the situation, know that there is. If you can intelligently like put your emotions aside, being butthurt that your bot lane wins 0-20.
Yeah.
And you intelligently say that there is no way of coming back from this game, not just because you're pissed off at somebody, but there is actually, you don't have the damage, that you clearly are getting outwarded and outpressured. If you can safely say that, then go ahead and surrender. Otherwise, no.
Okay. Do you have time for a few questions from the chat?
Yeah.
Awesome. Actually, okay, so guys, we're gonna do a few questions from chat and go ahead and post them now. We actually just got a really good question from Cobalt Streak who says, "How important is wordplay on a personal level? On a personal level for solo queue, should everyone be warding on your team, or should you rely on your own?"
Yeah, everyone should be warding, but don't count on it at all. So the more wards your team gets out, beautiful, but don't count on them to get any wards whatsoever. So all the wards you have, use them for yourself. Like place the wards that you want to make a play with. Don't just that's what you're gonna do. You're kind of playing a more individual role in solo queue. So use the wards for what you're gonna be using next, right? A lot of times you can give a teammate a ward, but if they didn't buy it, clearly they didn't want to dodge a gank, so let them die. Go place a ward in the buff that you're gonna invade, or in something you want to defend. So use your wards for what you want to do most of the time. Unless you're fed out of your mind, yeah, go ahead and ward for your teammate.
Okay. Would you still say buy a ward every back, pretty much?
Yeah, every back by ward. At least one, minimum of one.
Okay. Let me check other questions here. Let's see. Oh, I like this one by Brittany Phillips. I'm gonna reword it a little bit, but what she's basically asking is, with meta changing all the time, what is a viable jungler that people can start to learn if they're looking to jungle? What is a good jungler that low elo can learn? And that's basically what jungler can people start on. Actually get asked that all the time. What's like a really good jungler if you don't have a very good understanding of the game?
Sin's pretty straightforward. Sin's not a champion that has depth to it. What you see is what you get. There's no outplaying him. You know exactly what he's going to do. When he's near you, he's a very basic champion that has innate strength just from the actual base stats and how the champion works. Mm-hmm. He can get outplayed, of course, but he's just a really simple champion that has easy clears, it has good strength, and can be very rewarding. So starting with Xin is something that I definitely recommend because it allows you to not focus on your mechanics at all. You can just play the champion out and just understand jungling while the mechanics pretty much play themselves out. You literally press all three abilities at the same time while you gank, and that's it. All four, practically.
That's a great answer. Let's see. How do you get yourself to be able to carry with carry junglers when all of your lanes just either lose or just complain all game? And I think that goes back to you need to enable your team to win, right?
Well, yeah, you need to enable your team to win.
Yeah.
So if they're just flat out losing all the time, then you can't really do much for them. But if you're playing carry jungler, what you want to do is, since you're a carry, you deal damage. You need to create a situation for yourself to be isolated with somebody else that you can kill, aka the opposing jungler. So, or just somebody you're roaming around. So what you need to do is you use the wards that I previously mentioned, in which you just use wards for creating situations that you alone will make use of. So you place a ward, and then you're going to make a play with that ward you made, and that's about it. If your teammate wants to come to it, oh, great, they can tag along. But otherwise, you put that ward because you wanted to make a play there, because you predicted that something was going to happen around this area. So that's what you want to do with the wards, and that's what you want to do with carry junglers, just because you want to just create these situations in yourself that allow your laners to have an easier time and not have to worry about getting ganked, because you're basically creating something out of thin air on another part of the map.
Okay, so you're relieving jungle pressure on those lanes as well, and that actually ties into a question by thank you, Robbie, by Get Dunked 92. What are some tips for better ganking as the ganking aspect of the jungle exclusively? What are some better tips around that? How would you improve your ganking?
Okay, if you want to improve your ganking, you just need to be very creative. So being creative and knowing thinking about how the opponent will play is really important. So there is endless gank paths for practically every lane. Like mid lane, I could think of about 9 different gank paths.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, I mean, you have from left brush, from right brush, from lane, from behind race, from over the ledge on one side, over the ledge on the other one.
Yeah, like, that is 9 actually. Yeah.
Sides have 3. Lane, that's already 8. and then you have race from both sides. I mean, if you just want to count the side, it's pretty much 10. So you have 10 gank paths, and I guess if you really wanted to, you could just go shove the lane too and just gank from that way as well, or behind double turrets. Like there's so many paths that you could go behind the lane, or not even over race, just literally go behind the turret and try to get a gank that way. So you have a lot of opportunities. So thinking about those, you can apply that to the other lanes as well. For instance, if you want to gank top and the guy's really, let's say, okay, you're purple side and you want to gank this top laner that's really overextended, but he's being a pain in the ass to gank because he pretty much triple warded your jungle, right? He warded Pride, he warded River, and he warded like your red buff. How the hell are you going to gank this guy? And he has no flash. Well, you can't even come through lane because he can see you going through lane, right? Because he pretty much, let's say he warded double, so he can see you going through lane. It's like, oh, I can't go this way. Can you go through try? Can't go through try. It's warded. Can you go through river? No. What you can do though, you go all the way behind Wraith, behind to his blue buff pretty much. So you dodge all the wards, you enter their side of the map, you stand over by that little ledge, and then you just flash. You can start off a gank flashing. You flash into the lane behind them, and you can get a gank that way. And then they'll be like, well, this guy really wants to kill me. And then that's a good way to get a gank. So just being really creative about it and not being afraid of using abilities to go for it. Like don't be afraid to flash into a lane to get a gank. It's really useful. Just go. I mean, if you never try it and you see the play in your mind, then that's all on you for not having the audacity to go ahead and try it out before quitting on it.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. Eternus, consider adding counter jungling on this list. That actually goes into objective control, so we have that. When are you supposed to counter jungle? See, that's actually a really like simple, straightforward question, but I think it's good, worth answering.
Counter jungling is really not that big of not an effective tool, to be honest.
Just really?
All it does to, I mean, it can be effective. The idea behind counter jungling is not to deny the opposing jungle. That's not going to do anything. They purposely made the jungle so that counter jungling would not be effective, right? You're not going to be able to deny the guy or make him really struggle and like the guy's going to catch back up. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Literally, you cannot deny.
Oh my god, that drives me crazy. Like, there's so many times now where they, like, if you remember from Season 3, they should be, like, level 2, and, like, they're level 7 with you because it's so easy to catch up with the way the jungle camps ramp up EXP now.
It's literally impossible to deny the guy every camp. Unless you can deny every camp, it's not you can't do that as a one-man effort. It's impossible. So, what you need to do is you use the counter jungling to get wards into the jungling. You use the counter jungling to establish control on him, and you can time stuff from then on. So you go back to the roots of how you're making plays. You're making plays with timers, and you're making plays with mapping the opposing jungler's movement. So you counter jungling, you take a camp, and then you just drop a ward, right? You were in a situation, and then you took it. Great. And now you'll know next time that camp is up, you'll be able to see them. Or if somebody goes through that path, you'll see them because you counter jungle and took a ward in. It's basically just a little extra bonus for going into the jungle. But the whole purpose was to put a ward down, not to get the camp. That's for regular camp stealing. Now for stealing buffs, that is worth every single time. This is why you need to know timers. Counter jungling buffs is extremely important, but you're not getting buffs to deny the enemy experience.
Right.
It's very important to remember this. You're not getting buffs to deny experience. You're getting buffs to just get the buff, actually, and you're getting the buff to actually create a fight. If they want to fight you, great. You can pick a fight right from the start because you know that that's an area that something could happen. And the only time the buff is just the blue buff is the most important one, obviously, because you can deny the mid lane. And if being useful to the game, being understanding of the game, you'll be able to know if a certain mid laner has a certain matchup that is extremely blue buff reliant, right?
Right.
So if you can counter gank a
A
blue buff,
Nidalee. Yeah. Mm.
if you can counter gank a blue buff and get your own mid laner a blue buff, that's a point where you'll be able to establish a really strong mid game presence in which your mid laner is going to just completely destroy the opposing mid laner. Now, that's something that a lot of times people don't realize, that you really need to have a blue buff for your mid laner in specific matchups. Even in champions that don't have mana like Zed, being able that denying that blue buff in a lot of things is really important. That's something that you can look at from right from the beginning. And like you'll be thinking, I need to have this champion on blue buff 24/7. So just going back to the timers is really important. So this is the only time that counter jungling is really useful.
Okay.
So the counter jungling is mostly just around the blue buff, the buffs. It's the important aspect, the buffs and the wards. So this is something that you could put into the actual tier list, but I feel like this is something that honestly every champion can do. This is simply about timing. You don't need to find anybody else. You even fight. If you're there, if you have the timer, you can be there before the other guy and just outplay him. That's it. I mean, you can play a game and win it without even having a single fight happen. So just being able to outthink the opponent, out-rotate him, and be there before he is going to go a long ways.
Great. I actually love this question. I've dealt with it a couple of times individually. It's from AJ Rex, and I'm going to reword it a little bit, but it says, many streamers have a different view from Crumbz in solo queue. They teach viewers to carry the game from the jungle as a jungler, whereas Crumbz seems to want to depend on his carries to carry. How does this view apply in general and to lower elos, where the skill difference is a lot bigger? That's such a fantastic question.
That is a good question, actually.
Yeah.
See, that's a point where I would go with, I would transition the same play. I wouldn't transition the same play style completely into counting on my teammates to carry. So if I were to just play at a really low elo, I'd feel comfortable playing Lee Sin. But that's because I would trust myself not to snowball my lanes, but simply to create enough individual plays on my own that I'll just get really strong and just completely outplay the opponent, and then just keep killing them on and on, pretty much by myself. So it's a different kind of carrying. You don't need to have crazy items to carry. If you can just simply deny buffs, you'll be able to do all that you needed to do. But what I'd like to do in that elo would be I'd play champions that have really strong late games, right? You don't want to have champions that, if you're not completely confident in your early game champions like Elise, Lee Sin, Jarvan, don't go for those, right? These are champions that will eventually rely on your teammates. It's that simple. These champions need teammates to work. It's like down to the last straw, you need teammates. So you pick champions that, even if they have strong early games, at the end of the day, late game, that's where you can shine truly.
Right.
So champions like Vi, champions like Kale, Nocturne, these are champions
Jax,
these are champions that aren't going to be that great early, but if you have the before mentioned abilities to just be there before the other guy, time the stuff that he's not timing, get the buffs that he's not looking after, you should be able to basically snowball as if you were an early game jungler. And if your teammates aren't good enough to carry, you already ensure yourself to be able to carry in the late game because you picked a champion that just simply outscales. You'll be playing Kale. You'll be hitting that 5-item Kale in the jungle that's going to be able to split push and just one-shot a mid laner. You'll be the Jack that just needs to get 2v1. You'll be the Nocturne that can just split push and just Rice Lord all day. So, or Vi that can pretty much one-shot anything. So just picking a different kind of champion while maintaining the same early playstyle should enable you to, at first, almost check, see if your teammates can carry. And if they don't, then you'll just be able to play well. I mean, just recently I had a game where that was the most obvious thing that happened. I was playing on, I think it was some account, it was Challenger, and I was playing Vi, and the early game went absolutely horrendous. I tried to play a regular style, try to get a lot of ganks going, and nothing was working. My teammates were just really, really struggling. The game was going horribly, and it was like 1-8. It's like, okay, it's pretty tough. And I wasn't really farming that well. I tried to make a play on my own and I died. And I was like, 0-1. It wasn't really going places. But I was Vi. So I knew, okay, well, I can keep farming a little bit. I can keep going on. And I know that eventually I'll be able to, once I hit level 6, create plays here and there and be able to carry. So let's give it a go. So I kept playing. And then eventually I started hitting more items, and then I realized, well, I'm just going to build AD Vi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just because AD Vi carries solo queue super hard, so I built that, and then before you knew it, I was legendary, just because I got to the late game and the enemy team wasn't able to actually do anything because I kept getting stronger and stronger. My early game had failed. My teammates weren't able to carry me, but I picked a champion that is almost a fail safe. That it's a little like almost emergency seat to win. That's like, okay, well, now you have the champion to you at first you try to carry with your style, with your play style, and it just didn't work. But now you have the champion to help you out, and that's just something that you can apply to almost any elo or any match. You can feel like, oh, maybe I'm not going to be carried this game, or I'm not going to be able to help my team win it for me. I'm just going to have to do it myself.
And that goes back to playing Never Surrendering.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
because you were 1-8 and you still picked it up. Yeah.
You get a little potion of all these things together, and then you can play games out that you should be able to win many of them just by intelligent champion picks around the team that you have, good play style, and just assessing the situation correctly and knowing what you need to do. Do you need to start farming? Do you need to start making plays? What's happening in this game? What needs to happen for me to win? So just playing a lot and thinking about it every time before you go into the game. Think about, okay, how is this going to play out? Is this a good matchup? And honestly, a good way to start going about knowing all this, since a lot of this seems to be almost intuition, just go and play other roles. Like if you're thinking, damn, I'm a jungler, I don't know how much damage LeBlanc does. Do I know her cooldowns? I don't know her stuff. What better way to learn it than play LeBlanc yourself? You play your LeBlanc in mid lane, like, oh, now I understand how strong this champion is. What does it do? Like, how do I want to play this champion? If I were LeBlanc, how would I look to avoid a gank? So you look for things like that, but just playing a wide variety of champions. And from then on, you can just kind of know the feel of any other game, even if you're not playing those other champions at the time, just because you have played them and you do understand how it's going to flow, how the game will progress. And another thing that you can do for that is just ask people to play them. It's that simple, right? I mean, if you have a friend, I'm sure many people have guys that is like, oh, I'm a one-trick pony. I have 1,000 games of I don't know.
LeBlanc, yeah.
Like, hey, how would you react to this? Like, who do you hate playing against, right?
Right.
Who you hate getting ganked by? You ask things like that, and then you kind of understand how the games happen. So let's say the LeBlanc says, oh, I hate playing against Vi. Like, why does he hate playing against Vi? It's like, oh, because Vi has locked, right? It's easy for Vi to gank LeBlanc, things like that. So just understanding how every champion interacts with each other is a really easy thing. It's a really important, not an easy thing. It just takes experience to actually pull off.
Great. That's awesome. This Kitty Boy says, how can I improve my solo queue decision making? I often throw late game or feed ganking early when I jungle. So we were talking about like kind of how some of the techniques in the previous question on how to do better as a jungler. Now, how do you prove? And I actually kind of struggle with this too, or I used to a lot when I would make. I guess the way I got around it was actually just playing more games. Though I know that's like a really pedantic answer, but that's sort of what I did, because what ended up happening for me was you need to. Night Blue said a really smart thing once. He told me. I said, how did you get really good at this game? And he said, I looked at when I made a single mistake, and then I never made that mistake again. And that kind of jumped out at me by taking notes on those mistakes that you make. So I always keep a notepad in another window. And if I throw on a gank, I write down what happened there, like in that moment on the death timer. And that helps me improve my decision making for later, because then I go against that same situation and I say, okay, I can't get away with this. I know that, and then I back off. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, it just takes you to be self-aware before you make a decision. When you get ahead, when the game's even, the risks that you need to take are pretty high, right? You want to get ahead. You need to be aggressive to win. You can't be defensive to win a game. You need to be looking to make something that's going to win you the game. Once you start getting that lead, it's all about decreasing that risk. You're already ahead. You don't really need to do it. You need to take very small risks to win. So before you go for that fifth tower dive on that rise top, you need to think, likely that this gets turned by the Nocturne and Twisted Fate at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
If so, is it really worth the risk that this gets turned? Even Twisted Fate's off the map. I know Nocturne hasn't ganked for a while. I've ganked this guy 5 times already.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth it for me to kill this guy for the 6th time in a row? Probably not, right? So just think about it, and then before you go for it, I mean, a lot of plays don't happen out of thin air. You get a lot of warm-up time. Just think about it. You see how the map is moving out, and then you understand that something happens way before it happens. It's almost like chess, right? There's a limited amount of moves in chess, right? There's nothing crazy that nobody's ever thought of already. So once you understand that, you have a little bit of warm-up time to think, is this really worth it? I mean, you also need to understand that if you lose a spree that you're on, that's worth a lot of money and a lot of experience that the opposing team can go on. So a lot of times, just don't even go for it. If the risk is too high for the reward, don't go for it, especially when you're ahead. When the further you get ahead, the lower you need to have the risk. And you need to be really self-aware about it. To understand that when you're ahead, the risk, you don't want to play the same game that you played before, which was you go into them, you want to kill them. You just like, tower dive them. You want to play it so that they are forced. You need to create a situation that makes them go into you, which makes it that much easier, right? I mean, when you're sieging a turret down and the game's practically over, one of the best feelings you can have is when you know that the opposing team is so desperate for an engage that they're willing to practically look on every opportunity they have to just jump and try to go for a last-ditch resort. Yeah. And you know that should barely work. So you look for these situations in pretty much every aspect of the game when you're ahead. You want to have them be desperate to look for you. You want them to just, we need to make something happen or we're going to lose. So when you can control the games and have a really controlled pace to it once you get ahead, you'll be able to minimize your risk significantly and essentially not through it all, because what will happen next is instead of going for that crazy tower dive, what you're doing now is you're going for a one-man buff invade, right?
Yeah.
That's risky. I mean, it's way less risky than getting turned by a double global. And then if it dies, it's like, okay, well, one of you died and maybe you got the buff. Okay, not the end of the world, right? But instead, if you gave the guy the top lane rise a kill, him the ability to catch back up and farm, 2 globals got used, and they got 2 kills a spree and probably your turret after. That's a huge gold lead thing. So you want to minimize that so that the further you're ahead, the more you can mess up. You want to create that buffer zone so that every mistake, and you want to take that buffer zone away. Hopefully never, but if you do by making mistakes, you just want to take it blow by blow, not all at once. So just be really aware of what you're gaining for the play that you're going to create. And the consequences of it going wrong. It's really important to minimize throwing.
So that actually leads me into kind of a conjunction to that question, which is, so if you're behind, does that mean you should be taking massive risks?
Oh, yeah. If you're behind.
Really? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If you're behind, you never build. A thing I see all the time, people that are behind, they're building defensive items. Never. If you're behind, you need to build more damage. Yeah, of course.
Wait. This blows my mind. I didn't even know this. Are you really? Like, you build all damage if you're behind?
Yeah, of course. You need to build more. I mean, not necessarily in all junglers, but if you're behind, you need to build more damage.
Wow, that's got, you just like laid some like philosophy on me here. That
of course, right. Just think about it like that. If you're behind, that means that you have less money. That means that if you have less money, you have less items to spend on damage items. If you have less gold to spend on damage items, that means that you're dealing less damage. If you're using some of that minimized gold already to build defensive, you have even less gold to build damage. If you have even less gold, you're gonna do even less damage, and you're never gonna make anything happen. That means when you're behind, you need to make higher risk. You need to go for full damage builds. You need to be going all out just because you're already losing. It makes no sense to go for an item that is gonna, like, defensive item is when you're already winning. When you're winning and you get defensive items, that's because you want to make it so that the opposing team can't actually win. Right? It's like, oh shit, it's a cock block pretty much when you build defensive items. You're already behind. You don't need to protect yourself from anything. You need to be killing them.
Yeah.
It's
that's
like
a total
building defensive is not an item to win. It's an item to not lose.
That's so crazy. What a really cool insight that is. Like, I never even thought about that. I always just kind of assumed it's like, oh, I'm behind, I better build more tanks so I'm still relevant.
Yeah, that applies less to junglers, but I mean, if I'm playing jungle Kha'Zix and then right off the beginning I see, oh shit, like I'm maybe 5-0, but our team scores like 5-15.
Yeah.
I better not build this Randuin's and go for Hydra just because we need a shitload of damage to make a comeback from this. Yeah. If I'm tank, I'm not going to do anything. It's like, oh, great, I'm tanking them. Well, they're still there.
Okay. That's so cool, actually. Just took some notes on that. I'm going to review that tonight. Axeman07 asks, what do I do if the lane I helped snowball doesn't use their advantage correctly? So that I like that question because it kind of tied into our talk before.
That's just you making the incorrect decision of who to snowball. Like, it also you need to be able to judge the player right off the bat and see if they're going to be able to make the right decision. If they messed up enough to actually lose now and that you can't recover that advantage back, then I mean, that's just shit happens, right? You can't carry every game by making that happen. You're just going to increase your win rate. You're not going to win every game. That's pretty much fact.
Okay. What do you do if the opposing team controls your jungle by warding and then thus begins to shut you down on buffs? Your team does not help destroy wards.
Buy pink wards and buy sweeper. Buy sweeper in your first buy on your. Start with trinket, or maybe you can even start with sweeper. Sometimes I do that. Get a sweeper on your first buy, protect yourself, and start buying the pink wards. Just keep buying pink wards. It doesn't matter. Think about it like this: if you're behind and they're taking your shit, if you have a pink ward and let's say you spend 3 pink wards down and you're behind, you spent 300 gold to defend that red buff of yours.
Yeah.
And you actually got a kill out of it. That means that you just swung a huge amount of time, experience, gold lead. Like, you just made a huge upswing to winning that game, even though you spend all that money. It doesn't matter. Like, you need to be able to defend yourself. If your teammates is not going to help you, well, first off, you should tell them to help you.
Yeah.
Which is really important. If you really need the help, you should definitely tell them and not just sit there doing nothing. If they don't help you, then you're just gonna have to do it yourself.
Okay. Let's see. A few more here. Why are only a certain amount of jungle champions played in the LCS? Elise, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, and why are they picked so much over other champions who are otherwise successful in solo queue?
Because those are the champions that offer the most utility, pretty much. The ranking is for solo queue, and then Lee Sin is obviously the best jungler at the moment. He's crazy utility with his mobility, ward coverage, and kick damage. He's just all-around great champion. Elise, great magic damage with safety and utility with her cocoon. So all these champions, what they offer is the ability to just defend themselves on their own and create things on their own. A lot of champions can't really do that, especially killing. See, these champions offer a good amount of both utility and kill potential without the need of a team, without protection. That's why I don't know if Braum is viable. I haven't played Jungle Braum.
Yeah, okay.
None of his abilities sound like something that could wave clear. But
I watched Foxdrop do it, and I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. All the champions that are being played in LCS have the utility that something like a Jarvan would bring, with the ability to kill somebody on their own very quickly, as well as a great utility. So they're all very useful, self-sustaining champions that just don't need to be babysat, because what you want to do is you want to have your strongest member be in the jungle so that he can influence everybody. You don't want to have your weakest member be in the jungle. It's just because now you need 4 people in 3 different lanes to be helping you out. That makes no sense. That's going to collapse your teammate inwards into your own jungle. You want to spread out into the opposing jungler. And just create something happen there. That's why these champions are played, just because they are self-sustaining champions with high kill pressure, or if they're not high kill pressure, they will be really useful for an actual team composition.
Okay. 1 or 2 more questions here. Upcoming meta champion junglers, and actually, I wanted to ask you. Did you read for 4.9? They're thinking about. It was really ominous. They were like, we are not sure what we're gonna do with the jungle, but we feel like they're getting ahead too far and they're gaining experience over their lanes too easily. And they were going to lower the impact, I guess is the right word, of the jungle. So kind of upcoming jungle changes. How do you feel about that?
I've not read about these. I wouldn't really like that, to be honest. I think that that's not necessarily that true. Only if you have a crazy jungle game, yeah, maybe you'll hit level 6 before your solo lanes, or yeah, you hit level 3 before some lanes really often. But aside from that, like, you're not hitting level 15 before, like, half the time your solo lanes are 16, you're like level 12 or 13, right?
Yeah.
It's not that crazy of a difference in my opinion. I think it's in a good state right now. If it were to happen, I think that would make the jungle be pretty weak.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's not a position that should be behind. Like, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm level 4 Lee Sin ganking level 6 LeBlanc. Like, no.
Let me read it to you. It says we have big plans for the jungle. We're seeing problems where jungle is getting really far ahead of the game, especially if they have a strong start. We think it might have to do with lane EXP versus monster EXP, as lane minion EXP doesn't scale with average champion level, but jungle monster EXP does. Basically, a snowballing jungler gets his team some kills, they get levels and bring up the average level of the game. The jungler gets even more experience clearing camps for additional rewards. No other lanes get this kind of bonus, and we've been aware of strong junglers controlling the pace of the game. We're looking for many ways to tone that down.
I disagree.
Yeah, so do I.
I think that the reason that these junglers get really far ahead is not because of the jungle. It's because when they get a gank, they can just tax the lane as well.
Yeah.
That's the biggest part. It's not about the experience that the jungle brings. It's the fact that they can essentially get combined experience. A lot of the times, the games that I go absolutely crazy, where I'm like level 6 when the support's level 2, which has happened, is because I literally do an entire clear, gank a lane, push 2 waves of the lane solo because the other guy has to back, gank another lane, kill 2 people, get another 2 waves of experience, then take the other guy's jungle. It's literally all because of jungle taxing. It's got nothing to do with the actual experience. It's because you're able to get a combined experience with the jungle and the lane that allows you to get crazy advantages.
Okay.
And yeah.
So do you think it is? I mean, I think it should kind of be kept the same, but I guess we just kind of cross that bridge in 4.9 when we talk about this, because jungle could get real scary real quick if they make that kind of change.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like Feral Fire was sort of the golden age of jungling for that month that it was active.
Exactly.
In solo queue.
Like, I mean, that's kind of the same thing you can just do with Kale right now. It's like, well, Kale just pushed my lane. Okay. Oh, Kale just pushed my lane. So everyone's like, hey, Kale, stop pushing my lane. And then it's like the second dragon fight, and there's a level 15 Kale already coming out with 4 items that's from the jungle that just one-shots everyone. And then it's like, well, I guess good on you for pushing my lane, I guess.
Yeah. Let's see if I can reword this. How many do you have time for?
Not many more. I kind of need to sleep.
Yeah, we also been here for a while, so let me give you just a general esports question. How do you given this, and I'll just kind of reword this guy Num1's question. Given and this will be the last one for tonight, guys. So then we'll do our close thing. Given kind of the situation after Super Week, now we kind of know a little bit where teams stand, and who's performing and what's going on. How do you feel about the rest of the split? How do you feel like we're gonna do, and how do you feel? What kind of stood out to you, and what surprised you, and what do you expect in general?
Not particularly interested in how the other teams are going to be faring out.
Hmm.
It's really like, sure, if they're going to do well, that's great. Otherwise, then okay, good for them. But I think that as a team, even if we weren't even scrimming incredible teams, we'll be able to become better every week. So I feel like we definitely will improve weekly, daily, pretty much, and that'll definitely carry us a long way. So I think that what we're doing right now is definitely the right path to becoming a great team.
Awesome, dude. I mean.